the closer it gets. It stands underneath the streetlight. I'm not exactly sure what it is or what it wants. All I know is it wasn't angelic in the simplest of terms. When this all started, it was 5 or 6 streetlights down, and I couldn't tell if it was even a person. All it was a figure underneath the streetlight. It first started when I laid down one night. The cascading orange beams from the streetlight directly across the street pierced through the small gaps in my blinds, and I hated that about the room. It was never completely dark. The combination of the blinds and the intruding arrays gridded the room, making it very difficult to sleep. I would try so many times every night to get the gaps to close, but every attempt was a failure. Nevertheless, I wouldn't give up. Sleep was very precious to me as an adolescent. I stood up on the bed and tried to arrange the blinds into a pattern where the light was incapable to get through. And it worked for a minute. I laid down and quickly relieved that I could get a full night's sleep. After about 4 or 5 minutes, they collapsed. When this happened, one had gotten stuck, letting a substantial amount of light pass through. As I rolled over to assess my failure, I noticed that through one of the blinds I could see all the way down the street a figure that stood underneath the street, and it appeared to be looking directly at me, which I solely base off the outline of the figure. I anxiously fixed the blinds and laid back down, calming my nerves and waiting for slumber to overtake. The next day I was fine. I carried out my normal routine. I arrived at school. I finished school and then I came home. All day I couldn't shake the thought of that thing from down the street, though. I even checked for it when I drove over that spot on the way home. So that night after dinner, I headed off to my room and laid down, and it was about 8:30. It had been dark for about an hour, and I decided to see that maybe, just maybe, that thing was back. So I casually peeked out of my blinds, looking in the same general direction, and I froze. I was now standing underneath the third light post, and that just took me by surprise, I guess. I examined the beginning now that it's clear, or at least. It turns out that it was a man. However, it didn't look very ordinary. From what I saw, it was standing with its back facing me. It had dark clothes and they didn't seem to fit really. His right arm was lower than his left, and it was just strange. His head was cocked slightly to the left, and when I noticed that, it abruptly spun around and he glared directly at me. He then smiled from ear to ear, and his eyes opened, and they were a sort of glowing black. As he smiled, his grin stretched completely, just unhuman. And not the expression, not ear to ear, literally. It was from his temple to his temple. His teeth were reflective white, and the orange beam made it look jagged and sort of bloody. I jumped back away from the blinds and clutched the knife I kept under my pillow. I wanted to fall asleep. I kept thinking he's still out there. He's going to come to the window, and that I was going to die. But I guess somewhere in my panic I fell asleep. However, when I did wake up, my knife was gone. I didn't go to school that day. It was evident to my family that something was wrong. And I was just not myself. I didn't want to be alone. The slightest sound made me jump, and the ice machine, the ding of the washer, and the echo of my mother's voice while she's talking on the phone, they all made me jump. Everything was different for me for some reason. I couldn't get relaxed. I was on high wire all day. One incident, and I wouldn't have been ready to blow up. That night it was painful to think about what was going on. I didn't want to go near the window for some reason. However, for some very insane, demented reason, I had to check. I had to know if it was still out there. I gathered my confidence. I reached for the blinds, and through the orange rays, I lifted one of the shingles. Directly across the street, underneath our streetlight, stood the man, staring at me. He was smiling and laughing. He never blinked, and I could see now that he was mangled and ripped on his torso. His arms were missing giant chunks of skin, and blood pooled at his feet. I ran from the blinds into my parents' room, and for the first time in 10 years, slept near my parents. It hurt my pride, but I felt it necessary. I felt in danger, and I knew that what was outside my window was going to keep getting closer to me. And what would happen tomorrow? This could be right outside my window, and I guess then I fell asleep. The next day was exactly the same, with periodical blackouts. I was doing a project for school when I passed out. Mom said I was drawing some sort of strange picture with crayons. I didn't want to see them. I knew what was on them. It was going to be that man. I slept on the couch for the rest of the day. That evening, I ate dinner slowly. Slower than ever before, actually. I realized that fear turned to anger, and it took my peace and my sanity. I couldn't live this way. I wouldn't live this way. That night I walked slowly to my room and I laid in bed, and I didn't really want to check the blinds today. I couldn't look at them. I had no comfort. I laid down and closed my eyes. And then all of a sudden there was a tapping on my window, and my eyes sprung open. Hesitantly, I reached for the blinds, and I couldn't stop my hand. I parted the shingles knowing I was going to see that man staring directly back at me. I reached for the blind and separated them. I put my face through the window, and I was relieved to see a branch hitting the window. However, I realized something. I couldn't find the man. I let out a sigh and laid back down. I had never felt so comforted. I guess I had been imagining him the entire time. I smiled at the beams, never being so happy to see them. It was all over. Tomorrow I'd ask my mom for those pictures she said I drew. And then my spine shot straight up. The beams coming through my window were stopping short. They were outlining something. I assumed it was my mom, and I jokingly called to her. "I'm better now," with a smile. The only response I received was a temple grin and glowing black eyes. And at the sight of the figure that I now knew was not my mother, was the glistening of my own knife in the orange beam, and it began